Hamunaptra exists as a high-security quarantine zone, a massive ancient site engineered specifically to contain an apocalyptic evil. For centuries, explorers mistook these crumbling walls for a lost city of gold, overlooking the architectural warnings of the prison beneath. This prison held one specific inmate, High Priest Imhotep. 3,000 years ago, he engaged in a forbidden affair with the pharaoh's mistress, Ankh-Sunamun. When the pharaoh discovered them, she took her own life, and Imhotep desecrated the sacred laws of the dead in a desperate attempt to bring her back. Royal guards intercepted the ritual and sentenced Imhotep to the home die, the most agonizing punishment in the Egyptian legal code. He was mummified alive, his tongue removed, and sealed inside this wooden sarcophagus with a swarm of flesh-eating scarab beetles. The priests intended for Imhotep to suffer for eternity, but their use of high-level dark magic to bind the sarcophagus had an unintended side effect. By burying him under these specific enchantments, they inadvertently weaponized his agony, creating a supernatural time bomb waiting for an outside catalyst. By 1923, the specific nature of those ancient warnings had been forgotten. In this era of archaeological expansion, historical curiosity and the promise of profit have completely obscured the biological and spiritual dangers of the past. The story follows three unlikely partners: Evelyn, an expert in ancient scripts, her brother Jonathan, and Rick O'Connell, a desert-hardened soldier. They carry a half-burnt map and an intricately carved star-shaped puzzle box. Looking at these explorers against the massive scale of the monuments, we see the romanticized perspective that led to their downfall. They handled the star-shaped puzzle box as a simple prize, overlooking the ritual iconography on its surface that identified it as a mechanical lock for a spiritual weapon. The curse requires human intervention to function. It is the predictable drive of greed and scientific arrogance that pushes these mortals to excavate a site that was never meant to be reopened. Upon reaching Hamunaptra, the archaeological intrusion takes on an industrial scale. Rick's team is forced to compete with a rival American group led by Benny, a man whose cowardice is matched only by his obsession with finding royal gold. Hamunaptra's physical security relies on immediate, lethal deterrence. Light reflecting mirrors guide explorers into traps, involving pressurized acid that liquefies the workers, while defensive scarabs are hidden within the masonry, capable of burrowing through flesh to reach the brain. These mechanical defenses effectively cull those driven by simple theft. However, they fail to stop an academic like Evelyn, whose knowledge of the tomb's layout allows her to bypass the physical hazards and reach the inner sanctum. Inside the sanctum, Evelyn finds that the puzzle box is a mechanical interface. It slots into the heavy cover of the Black Book of the Dead, serving as a deadbolt that she rotates to release the seal, allowing her to read the resurrection spell aloud. The atmospheric shift is instantaneous. Imhotep awakens, immediately summoning a dense plague of locusts that sweeps through the human camp. The curse follows a strict biological protocol for regeneration. Imhotep is magically bound to hunt the specific American explorers who took his sacred canopic jars. He must drain their organs and fluids to rebuild his own decomposed body. The system contains a built-in vulnerability based on ancient mythology. As guardians of the underworld, cats represent a primal threat to the undead. Rick exploits this rule, using a white cat to halt the creature's advance and buy the team time to escape. Imhotep functions as a being governed by a highly specific, rule-based magical program. Survival depends on the humans learning the parameters of that program and finding a way to rewrite the code. The crisis escalates as Imhotep consumes his final targets and reaches full physical power. He kidnaps Evelyn, intending to sacrifice her to complete the ritual that will return Ankh-Sunamun to a living body. Rick and Jonathan launch a rescue mission using a vintage biplane representing the 1920s technological edge. Imhotep counters by weaponizing the environment, summoning a massive sandstorm that engulfs the aircraft and forces a crash landing near the ruins. Once inside the tomb, modern ballistics prove useless. Rick's shotguns and blades have no effect on the immortal priest or the army of mummified royal guards he summons to defend the ritual. The resolution requires a countercommand. Jonathan secures the Golden Book of Amun-Ra, and with Evelyn's translation, he accesses the guards' command structure. He reassigns their primary objective, ordering the mummies to execute Anksunamun instead of protecting her. Evelyn reads the final spell to strip Imhotep of his divine protection. A spectral chariot sweeps through the chamber, removing his immortality and leaving him a vulnerable mortal, allowing Rick to land a fatal blow and sent him into the pool of lost souls. Brute force was insufficient for survival. The team only succeeded by utilizing the civilization's own ancient security protocols to dismantle its most dangerous criminal. Benny's fate stands in contrast to the hero's victory. Reflecting the self-destructive obsession seen in these massive excavation crowds, Benny remains focused on looting the treasure. He inadvertently activates the tomb's final lockdown, sealing himself inside to be consumed by the very forces he sought to exploit. Rick, Evelyn, and Jonathan escape the collapsing city. They exit the desert with their lives and a small portion of the gold, having successfully navigated the lethal logic of the tomb. The events at Hamunaptra illustrate a specific hierarchy of danger. The ancient curses and swarms of scarabs only become active when fueled by the timeless human drive for greed and reckless curiosity.